Hello! So, I've started reading WARBREAKER. Um, and this one's a bit more difficult than the other ones to divide up neatly into videos because it doesn't come with pre-made parts like the other Sanderson books I've read. Instead, it's all just one whole. So I'm just kind of gonna record these at really random points in the story that feel like they might be some kind of act ending moment. So the video title has the exact chapters for this one, but I'm basically about a third of the way through, so this will probably be 3 videos, unless I get carried away and just read the entire rest of the book, which might happen, but because I am making a very fast progress with this one. Anyway, this book is very interesting so far. It's, I don't know how to feel about it. I feel like it might be a bit of a step back in quality, which I'm surprised I feel that way because I've heard very good things about this book. But compared to Mistborn, I feel like both the prose and the character work on the main characters is a bit weaker in this one. That might just be an early book thing, though. It's possible that by the end of the book, I will have a much better grasp of the characters of Vivenna and Ciri than I do right now, because right now I kind of feel like I don't really have much insight into their personalities. And I'm hoping that the impression I have of the writing style being maybe a bit more basic than previous books, I'm guessing that's just sort of the fact that between my last Sanderson book and this one, I read a book with a very different, much more advanced writing style, Gideon the Ninth. So it's possible that that's sort of twisting my perception there, and that this is just the regular level of sort of prose that Sanderson brings to the table. But yeah, those technical issues aside, I'm not going to make any judgments on that yet because I'm very early on in the book. But the actual plot of the book, I do find interesting. We are continuing with the extremely mechanically specific and scientific hard magic systems that we had in Mistborn. That's very much still Sanderson's shtick. We are continuing with the multiple POV structure that Sanderson always has. We are continuing with very unique settings, which are very much defined by their magic systems, with societies that have their own values and cultures and stuff that sort of revolve around magic of the world, which I always like with Sanderson. The dynamic between the main characters is interesting, Vivenna and Ciri. I knew going into this book that it was going to be about 2 sisters. I didn't really know much more about it. I just knew, I'd read somewhere that this book is about sisters. And I find their dynamic fairly interesting, even if it's a bit cliche. Like, it's the whole, like, you know, oh, one is more proper and traditionally feminine, and the other is more tomboyish and rebellious. It's Sansa Stark and Arya Stark, basically. But unlike a lot of other stories that use that particular trope, here the sisters do seem to care about each other, or at least Vivenna cares a lot about Ciri, even if she doesn't know her very well. So it doesn't really feel like there's a rivalry or a tension between the sisters, which is a nice change from how that trope is usually played. I also like the slight twist on that idea, which is that even though Vivenna is the more traditionally ladylike one, and the one who was trained for life at court her whole life, it kind of seems so far that Ciri is actually much better suited to her role at the court in Halandren than Vivenna would have been. Which is an interesting wrinkle to that particular trope of the two sisters. So I'm curious to see where that goes. I'm curious to see if we will see any serious repercussions for Ciri's more rebellious behavior, or if it will continue to just actually work out for her. Vivenna is definitely having some tension with her personality traits and the stuff that's happening in her storyline, with her getting all the breaths and being all, oh, blasphemy. I do really think I enjoy Vivenna more right now, just because there's more of a tension with her as a character. Ciri hasn't really come into her own yet. I don't really feel like there's anything about the character for me to hook onto as a reader, whereas with Vivenna there's a bit more there. Also, Vivenna's storyline has two of my favorite characters, which is Denth and Tongfa, the mercenaries. I love these two. I love all of their interactions. They are fantastic comedic relief characters. I really enjoy them. I also enjoy that we have two female protagonists for a change, because I've complained in previous Sanderson books that there is a dearth of female characters. Like, both Elantris and Mistborn have, like, center female protagonists, but those female protagonists tend to be, like, the only women, the only major female characters in those books. Here, that's very much not the case. We've got Ciri and Vivenna, we've got Blushweaver, we've got their third sister, whose name I forget right now, but there's already a plethora of female characters, and the promise of more, because there is also the third mercenary who works with Denth and Tongfa, who we haven't met yet, called Jules. So, yeah, if this book is any indication of the Cosmere going forward, Sanderson does appear to be getting a bit better about having more female diversity in his books. Now, the other thing that I found interesting about... actually, no, before I move on to that, I just want to say, because I've only talked about Ciri and Vivenna so far, and there are, in fact, 4 point-of-view characters. Well, 3.5. So, the remaining point-of-view chapters mostly belong to Lightsong, and Lightsong is a very interesting character. I do not have the same criticism of him that I have of the girls, which is that he feels a bit basic and underdeveloped. He is interesting, and I do find him very compelling to read about, even though he hasn't really even done much yet. Like, all of his chapters have just been him being bored. But it's somehow compelling to read about, because he is such an interesting and nuanced character with a lot of potential. The whole, oh, the returned can give away their breath once to heal someone, but it would kill them thing, is the most obvious Chekhov's gun in literary history. Like, gee, I wonder how Lightsong's arc is gonna end. I wonder. So that's, when that inevitably happens, I will not be surprised. Although I'm sure I might be surprised by who he saves with it, who knows. Or maybe he won't. Maybe he'll just stay alive at the end of this story and never give anyone his breath, but somehow I doubt it. So, I do enjoy Lightsong, but there's not a lot to say about him yet. Vasher, there's even less to say about. Vasher is, like, barely in this book. He's had, like, 2 chapters so far, and I don't know what his deal is, but he is interesting. And also, he has a talking living sword, which is something that hasn't really been mentioned outside of his chapters, like as a concept even in this setting. So I'm curious to learn more about the talking swords, definitely. Now, what else do I have to say here? Yeah, there's a dynamic between Ciri and the God King, which hasn't really developed yet. I'm curious to see where it's going. I'm hoping it won't just be like a Beauty and the Beast type trope played straight, because that seems boring. That's just not a very compelling trope to me. But it might be. So far, it kind of looks like it's heading in that direction, but we don't really know much about the king yet, so it might also not be. And I should maybe have faith with that. Brandon has so far never really taken characters and plot themes in their most predictable directions. So I should probably have more faith in him than this. So I'm going to. I'm going to believe that that's not where this story is going, that there's going to be something more interesting there. The second thing that's more interesting is that this book is very explicit and open in talking about sex, which is something that Sanderson has so far shied away from. Like, Sanderson so far has had a very Robert Jordan approach to sex in Mistborn and Elantris, where it's barely alluded to as existing most of the time. And only between married people. Weirdly, in Mistborn. Here, that doesn't seem to be the case. Here, characters talk about sex openly. They use the word sex. Even a character like Ciri, who comes from a, like, backwards conservative mountain village, it just doesn't appear to be a super taboo topic, which I find interesting. I wonder if that's a change in Sanderson. Like, I wonder if he in general has just decided to be more open about this topic and more comfortable with it, or if that's meant to be specific world building about this setting. Like, the fact that in this setting, sex is just treated a bit more casually than elsewhere. It's too early to tell. Yeah, I don't think I have much more to say so far. This first section I read has been mostly set up. I'm sure this story is heading in the direction of a war between the two nations, which I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out, because Light Song's dreams seem to imply it's not gonna go as well for Halandren as they think. Yeah, so I will we'll see how much more of this book, and a yet to be determined chunk of this book, and then I'll come back to talk about it. Bye!